The abandoned hospital where time stands still, in the heart of a forgotten town, where the sun seemed to rise and set in the same spot every day, stood the old St. Mercy Hospital. Its stone walls, once a beacon of hope and healing, now loomed like a silent sentinel, guarded by the overgrown ivy and the whispers of the wind. For years, the hospital had been a place where the town's ailing found solace, but as the population dwindled and modern medicine took hold, the doors of St. Mercy closed for the last time, leaving behind a shell of its former self. No one knew exactly when the last patient left, or when the last doctor hung up their stethoscope, but the stories that lingered were as haunting as the place itself. Some said the hospital was cursed, a place where time itself had decided to cease its relentless march. Others whispered of patients who had never left, their spirits bound to the corridors and rooms where they had once sought relief. But for most, it was simply a place to avoid, a relic of a past they preferred to forget. Among the few who dared to venture near was a young man named Ethan. He had grown up in the shadow of St. Mercy, listening to his grandmother's tales of the hospital's heyday. She had been a nurse there, her stories filled with the warmth of camaraderie and the challenges of her profession. But as Ethan grew older, the stories became tinged with a sense of foreboding. And he couldn't help but be drawn to the place, curious about what secrets it might still hold. Ethan's curiosity was not without purpose. He was a photographer, and his gaze was always trained on the world around him, looking for the beauty in the forgotten and the decay. He had heard the rumors, of course, but he was more interested in capturing the essence of a place that had once been so vital to the community. So, one crisp autumn morning, with his camera slung over his shoulder and a notebook in hand, Ethan set out to explore the abandoned hospital. The hospital's gates were rusted shut, but the chain-link fence that surrounded the property had long since succumbed to the relentless push of nature. Ethan found a gap and slipped through, the dry leaves crunching under his feet. As he approached the main building, he could see the peeling paint and the shattered windows, each one a silent eye peering out into the world that had moved on. He pushed open the heavy wooden door, and it creaked loudly, a sound that echoed through the empty halls. The air inside was musty, a mixture of old medicine and forgotten hopes. Ethan's flash illuminated the lobby, revealing a world frozen in time. The reception desk was still cluttered with papers and patient files. The chairs in the waiting area looked as though they were waiting for someone to return, and the floor was littered with discarded magazines, their covers faded and brittle. As he moved deeper into the hospital, Ethan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The corridors were dark, and the only light came from the occasional beam that filtered through the broken windows. He snapped photos of the abandoned rooms, each one a time capsule of a different era. In one, he found a surgery theater with instruments laid out as if the operation had just begun. In another, a maternity ward with cribs lined up, waiting for newborn cries that would never come, but it was the fourth floor that drew him in. The stairs were creaky, and the air grew colder with each step. The fourth floor was different from the others, it felt almost alive, as if the very walls were holding their breath, waiting. The door at the end of the corridor was slightly ajar, and as Ethan approached, he could see a faint light spilling out from the room. It was almost as if someone had left a lamp on, a strange anomaly in a place where time had stood still. He pushed the door open, and the room revealed itself to him. It was a small, circular room with a single window, and in the center stood a grand Victorian bed, draped in a delicate lace canopy. The bed was made, the pillows arranged, and on the nightstand, a single candle burned, its flame steady and unwavering. Ethan's heart raced as he stepped inside, his camera trembling in his hands. He took a deep breath and began to explore. The walls were adorned with paintings, each one a portrait of a different woman, all of them looking serene and peaceful. The air was filled with a faint scent, something floral and sweet, like the perfume of a bygone era. As he moved closer to the bed, he noticed a journal lying on the bedside table, its leather cover worn and cracked. Ethan opened the journal, and as he did, the world around him seemed to shift. The pages were filled with the elegant script of a woman, her words spilling out like the secrets of a confidant. She wrote of her life at St. Mercy, of the patients she had cared for, and of the love she had found in the arms of a young doctor. But as he read on, the entries grew darker, filled with despair and a sense of being trapped. The woman's name was Eleanor, and she had been a nurse at St. Mercy for over 30 years. Her love had been James, a brilliant surgeon who had saved countless lives. But one day, a patient had come to the hospital, a young girl with a mysterious illness that no one could cure. James had been determined to find a cure, and he and Eleanor had spent countless nights in the hospital, researching and experimenting. But the young girl's condition had worsened, and in a moment of desperation, James had turned to an ancient manuscript he had discovered in the hospital's archives. It spoke of a ritual that could extend life, a dark magic that required a sacrifice. James had been torn, but the thought of losing the girl, and the chance to prove his worth, had driven him to the brink. Eleanor appeared before him, her form ethereal and beautiful, a ghost of a nurse from a time long past. She looked at him with gratitude in her eyes, and as the light faded, she spoke, "Thank you, Ethan. You have given me the gift of freedom, and I will always be in your debt." Her voice was soft, but it carried a strength that had been forged by years of waiting. Ethan felt a surge of energy, and the draining sensation vanished. He realized that the ritual had not taken his life, but had somehow restored it to Eleanor. She was no longer a spirit bound to the hospital, she was alive, and free. Eleanor stepped forward, her hand brushing against his cheek. "Go, Ethan. The world outside is waiting for you. But remember, this place is not just a ruin, it is a testament to the lives that were touched by it, and the love that binds us all." As she spoke, the room began to change. The paintings of Eleanor returned to their original subjects, and the candle on the nightstand flickered and went out. The bed was no longer made, and the air lost its floral scent. The room was once again empty, a place where time had long since ceased to exist. Ethan turned and walked out of the room, his heart heavy but his spirit light. He descended the stairs, his camera now capturing the transformation of the hospital as it returned to its abandoned state. When he reached the lobby, he paused, looking back at the building. The door at the top of the stairs was now closed, and the hospital looked as it had when he first arrived, a silent monument to the past. He left the hospital, the journal tucked safely in his bag, and as he walked through the town, he felt a sense of peace that he had never known before. The hospital had changed him, had shown him that even in the darkest of places, there was a possibility for redemption and love. Ethan's photos of the hospital became a sensation, a visual narrative of a place where time stood still, and where one young man had dared to challenge the curse. But more than the photos, it was the story of Eleanor and James that captured the hearts of those who saw them. The hospital was no longer just an abandoned building, it was a place of memory and reflection, a reminder of the sacrifices made and the love that endures. Years later, Ethan would return to the hospital, not to photograph it, but to visit. The building had been restored, turned into a museum that honored the lives of those who had once worked and lived there. Eleanor's story was a central exhibit, and her portrait, the one that had been on the fourth floor, hung in the lobby, a symbol of the love that had transcended time. As Ethan stood before the portrait, he felt a gentle presence beside him. Eleanor was there, not as a ghost, but as a memory, a part of the hospital's history that would never be forgotten. She smiled at him, a smile that spoke of gratitude and the enduring power of the human spirit, and so, the old St. Mercy Hospital stood, a place where time had once stood still, but where the memories of those who had once walked its halls continued to live on. Ethan, the photographer, had not only captured a place, but had also helped to free a soul, and in doing so, had found a part of himself that he had never known existed.